Hello, I am Dr. Vipul Aggarwal, and today I will talk about basics of obesity. Many people I come across in clinic and otherwise often believe that weight loss is all about how much you eat and then burn. Reduce your calorie intake and they think your weight will also decrease. It sounds like a simple math calculation, but our body is more complex than that and it is just not true. In fact, there is no causal relationship between calorie intake and obesity. The reason for that is quite simple. Body weight is not only determined by how many calories that you are consuming, but it's also about how many you are burning. Calories that are consumed are not automatically converted into fat. This simply is not backed up by any data. Calories are used for all sort of things from producing heat, building bone and muscle tissue to fueling your body and increasing the volume and rate of your heartbeat. Fat production is just one of many different things your body does with the calories that you consume. Obesity is not caused by eating too much, but basically it is an energy usage problem. Some people bodies will convert calories into fat while others will simply develop bigger bones and muscles or use that energy to boost their concentration. Next point is reducing calorie intake reduces energy expenditure and it lowers the metabolic rate. This is another common myth. To explain this, just imagine if you suddenly reduce your calorie intake while you continue to use the same amount of energy, is it possible? No, body won't be able to survive. That's why body will reduce its all over energy expenditure when you eat less. One way body reduces energy expenditure is to cut their metabolic rates, leading to all sort of adverse effects on the other bodily functions. Luckily for all of us, these experiments have already been done. In research which was conducted by Dr. Ansel Keys, who was interested in starvation, a problem which many believed would become acute in post-World War years. To observe its effect, he radically reduced his subjects' calorie intake. His study found that these subjects constantly complained that they felt cold, and it was because their metabolic rate had declined by over 40%. Their average heartbeat dropped from 54 to 32. Their brain activity showed signs of serious impairment, accounting for lethargy and inability to concentrate. This just shows that cutting down on calories isn't a viable solution to weight issues. So what is the real issue? High insulin levels are the real cause of obesity. Putting on weight is very easy. Contrary to popular belief, the most effective way of gaining weight is not binge eating. If you really want to gain weight rapidly, all you have to do is inject yourself with a hormone which your body already produces, which is known as insulin. And it's insulin, or rather increased insulin levels and associated hormonal imbalances that are the main cause of obesity. Obesity is hormonal driven. Hormones like ghrelin, for example, will make you feel hungry. Leptin, by contrast, tells you when you have had enough to eat. And that's where insulin comes in. Once the amount of insulin in your body rises above a certain level, your hormonal balance is disturbed, leading to behavior such as overeating. Snacking between meals leads to higher insulin levels and can lead to insulin resistance. Insulin is basically a hormone responsible for removing sugar from your bloodstream and depositing it in your body's cells, thus regulating your blood sugar levels. When you eat carbohydrates and sugars, the body produces extra insulin to deal with this incoming sugars. Eating too many sugar or simple carbohydrate-rich foods throws that delicate mechanism out of order. When that happens, your cells eventually become insulin resistant. That essentially means cells become unresponsive to insulin hormone receptors and stop taking in sugar molecules from your blood. As a result, insulin-resistant people have a much harder time losing weight. Their cells only receive a small portion of the sugars they have consumed and constantly cry out for more food, resulting in weight gain. That's also the reason even successful diets ultimately prove unsustainable. Most people eventually give in to their body's demands to be fed. One of the chief causes of raised insulin levels is snacking between the meals because each small snack will lead to peak in insulin production. And if you are always grazing like cattle all the time, your body will constantly be producing medium to high levels of insulin, and that's the problem because ideally your body should also have regular periods of low insulin levels, but that's only possible if you fast for around 4 to 5 hours after a meal and give your body a chance to reduce that spike in insulin production before your next meal. Next point is dietary fats are not unhealthy with notable exception of modified trans fats. As obesity become a recognized public health issue in the second half of the 20th century, experts and laymen alike reached a seemingly unscientific conclusion. Believe us, people were putting on too much weight because they were eating too much fat. Most dietary fats aren't unhealthy at all, with an exception of modified trans fats. These are really bad for you. You have probably heard of saturated fats. Their name reflects the fact that their molecules are saturated with hydrogen, which prevents them from going rancid as quickly as polyunsaturated fats. While most vegetable oils are polyunsaturated by nature, most vegetable oil products like margarine are artificially saturated to extend their shelf life. That's why we call them modified trans fats or hydrogenated vegetable oils, and they are really bad for you. So what should you eat and which things are best avoided? The main takeaway is problem is not the dietary fat, it's the sugar. Cut your sugar consumption and you will also decrease the risk of obesity. Sugar does a couple of things that make obesity and related issues much more likely. First off, it increases your insulin levels, and that will eventually lead to insulin resistance. That down to the fact that sugar or sucrose contains something called as fructose, which is a type of sugar which only the liver can metabolize. When you consume too much of this substance, your liver will struggle to keep up and begin transforming fructose into fat. That in turn will increase the risk of insulin resistance, and it will interfere with the healthy digestive functions. The only thing worse for you than sugar is high fructose corn syrup. As the name suggests, it is basically made up of more than 55% of fructose. And the regular sugar is made up of equal parts of glucose and fructose. So if you want to reduce exposure to obesity, start by cutting down on the sugar. But remember, sugar is often found lurking in the unlikeliest products, so make sure you check the labels. If it contains lots of sugar or high fructose corn syrup, better to leave it. So losing weight is not about drastically reducing your calorie intake or exercising more. What really makes a difference is cutting down on foods which raise your insulin levels, and that to increase the insulin levels at a frequent interval. Avoid constant snacking. The other thing that will really help you is something known as intermittent fasting. I will talk about this in my upcoming videos. There is a line which is very good and I like in most of the books that I come across, that if you have to exercise to lose your weight, that means your diet is wrong. Exercise has got many benefits. Weight loss is not one of them. Best of